Hi there. Welcome to another episode of What's Your Story? Tonight, we have the great privilege of sitting down with Suzanne Stohlman, close neighbor and friend, right? Right around the corner.
Definitely.
So, welcome to our show. And I'm going to say that this is my last interview that I will be doing. So, I'm very excited that you are our last interview on this show that we've have been running for a few years now.
Well, I'm
Got
honored.
to know a lot of our community members, but we wanted to make sure we got you in here. So, so Suzanne, you've been here a while, but where did you start your life off?
I grew up in New Jersey. I was born, I grew up in New Jersey, and basically spent the first 22 years of my life there. And however, my cousins lived in the house around the corner.
Okay.
And when I was 4 years old, we came here for the first time to visit. They were actually my father's first cousins. And so this place has been part of my life ever since. Now there are a couple of chapters that got me here.
Yeah.
After college, Michael and I were living in Western Massachusetts, and we had sort of temporary jobs. You know how it is when you first get out of college.
Yeah.
And one of my cousins, Mary, died, leaving Marion with this great big house, a shop where they made most of the items in the shop, and a huge flower garden that they had also sold flowers, arrangements, all kinds of wonderful bouquets. And Michael and I, being young and footloose, said, we'd better go and why don't we go help Marion for the summer? For the summer. This was 1974.
Oh, wow.
So
you've been here since 1974. My goodness.
And shortly after we got here, Marion decided she really had to sell the house. There was no way she could keep things going.
Yeah.
And through one thing and another, Michael and I were in no situation to buy it. So my mother said she would buy it.
Okay.
We used to tease her that she was our absentee landlady. And Michael and I took up the shop.
Yeah.
But as we all know, when new people come, it's not the same. And so after 3 years, we continued the flowers for another 2. So we actually ran the gift shop flower business for 5 years. And in the fall of 1979 was when we finally closed our shop.
Yeah, and that is over by the Captain Lord's Mansion.
Right.
And so, and there's some pretty unique things that that house had in it for a while. Can you talk about?
Yes. Well, of course, what intrigued me not only about these 2 lovely ladies, who were charming,
the Grandaman Sisters,
Mary and Marion.
Yeah.
In their younger days, they had built 2 dollhouses in 2 cupboards on either side of the fireplace. Well, it would be similar to here. And one was after Williamsburg, colonial, well, maybe early Federalist. There were a few pictures of little statue of George Washington and Lafayette on the mantelpiece.
Yeah.
And then the other dollhouse on the other side of the fireplace, these were all built into shelves in these cupboards. The one on the right side of the fireplace was late 19th, early 20th century. And it was modeled after the brownstone house they grew up in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
So, and of course, as a 4-year-old, these were just intriguing.
Amazing. And they made them all by?
They made a lot of the things. Some of the things they had in their own dollhouses when they were little. Some of the things they made, some of the things would have been miniatures in real life, became huge portraits.
Yeah.
You know, a little framed photograph on a bureau became the major portrait in the parlor.
I remember the first time when I came over and you said, "Do you want to see something?" And I had no idea that it was. I don't know. It was just so magical to to open the was a slider.
Well, it was
or
an
door.
actual door.
A door.
An actual
Okay,
door.
so open the door, and I was looking inside, and I felt like Alice in Wonderland, looking into this little world of in the oven. There was a chicken, or it was just amazing.
We had lived there for several years when I finally decided I needed to clean the dollhouses, and I discovered there was a turkey in the oven in a pan. Because the door had been closed. And little fried eggs in the frying pan that the Grandamans had made. Yeah. And that was one of my memories from my first trip here.
Yeah.
So,
so back in the day, there was a Graves Library fundraiser. It cost $2 to go on this tour of different places in Kennebunkport. And it was pretty incredible. They raised a bunch of money, and but I remember there's a list that we have close to our circulation desk, and that your house was on one of the stops, and I think they gave lemonade or something like that out,
and homemade cookies,
and homemade cookies. Yes, exactly. So, so talking a little bit about them, you have been putting together a special project. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's a small book called The Grandaman Sisters, and it's about their early life and then the life they had in with the shop, and really two very different periods.
Yeah,
they had grown up again, as I said, in Brooklyn.
Yeah,
and their mother inherited a huge sum of money, and so they went traveling from the time the girls were fairly young, and all around the United States. And then after the First World War, they went to Europe, and eventually they settled on Biarritz, which is in the southwest coast of France.
Okay.
And so they spent the winters there, and at some point they bought this house in Kennebunkport and spent the summers here. So they would sail in October to France and return in April.
Amazing, huh?
Yeah. So they had quite a life.
Wow.
And then after both their parents died, they needed to supplement their income.
Yeah.
And that's how the shop got started.
Okay.
They started with pottery and flowers only.
Yeah.
And then they added items
That is so cool.
to that. And they decorated, they actually made pottery from scratch. And then that was so time consuming that they bought blanks and did all kinds of designs, scenes around town, flowers, birds, ships' figureheads, copying cruel curtains that they had hanging in the house, anything that caught their imagination.
Yeah.
And they also modeled little birds, whales, seahorses, whatever came up.
So why write this book? What's so important? Because you're adding part of your own story,
A little bit at the end.
but I think it's with Michael Terabilda, who was a wonderful volunteer here at the library. We actually, I think, had him on staff a little while to dust. He was the duster.
Along with everything else he did.
Yeah. Took care of our gardens, took care of the book sale.
Right.
But, so he also was a poet. And so you able to put together his books of poetry. But I think this is really wonderful that you're doing this.
Well, I have a friend who we should back all the way up to 2003
Mm-hmm.
when David Scarborough came to me and said, I have these wonderful, we call them shell pictures, they're really collages.
Yeah.
And we got to do an exhibit about the Grandamans. Well, we had a very small exhibit
Yeah.
at the Historical Society in one corner in 2003. And then in 2004, we took up the whole big display area
Yeah.
at the Pasco Center.
Yeah.
And there were over 200 items in the exhibit. And so my good friend Phil Tilney said, who's a folklorist, said, you've got to write a catalog. You've got to do something. This is absolutely wonderful. Well, that was 20 years ago. And now with the dollhouses, I finally decided they really needed to find a new home. I'm not getting any younger, and they needed to have a place, a permanent place.
Right, right.
So they are now, I gave them to the Brickstore Museum, and they are now there. So Phil said, all right, this is the time to do that book. So the last couple of years I've been working on it. And we tried to give a sampling of all the various things that they made. And as well as the first part of the book is about their early history, and then the second part's about the shop and all the things that they made.
So when it's all put together, will you come and do a book signing for us?
Well,
Please?
yes. Well, yes.
So now, and you've been able to do a little bit of traveling in your life.
Well, yes,
anywhere,
I've been very fortunate.
Anywhere fun?
Well, Michael and I have twice spent the winters in Crete.
Okay.
And that was back in the 70s when things were still pretty simple.
Yes,
and, which was a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
And I did spend my junior year in Paris, so that was, needless to say, a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
And I had met Michael over there, so we spent a lot of time together at that point.
Yeah.
And then we've gone back and visited friends in Germany and England, Scotland.
Yeah.
And
you're planning a trip
and
coming
I'm
up,
about
right?
to go for a couple of weeks to visit all those friends. So.
Good for you. Do you need anyone to carry your bag?
Yes, actually, I would love to have somebody
or
go.
make your tea. That sounds like a fun trip, though. I know you were telling me a little bit about it the other day.
Forward to it.
Yeah, that'll be really nice.
So and about the library too. Mary was actually librarian here for a short time.
You know, I think it's the perfect name.
Yeah.
Right? That goes, if you're named Mary, you got to become a librarian. Or Marianne, you got to become a librarian.
Right.
So that, and so she was here, when would that have been?
Oh, probably sometime in the 60s.
Okay.
I don't honestly know the date.
So that would have been right in this room.
Because the front door was there.
The front door was
and
there.
There was a checkout desk right here.
Yep. And the room above was children's.
Yeah.
So, so you came in the front door, went up a different set of stairs. No, those are the same stairs. But you went in a different door. I guess that's what I'm thinking of.
Oh, maybe.
Yes, at the top of the stairs, there was a door that went right into
into the big room.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so, and then when Michael appeared on the scene, and he started doing some of the gardening work, and then when I first started working here over 26 years ago now, Michael was running the book sale.
He was already a fixture.
And yes, and it was upstairs in the where our children's librarian sits. It was on the wall of where the young adult books are now.
Right.
That was it. That was the book sale. So
I'd forgotten that.
It's incredible to think about the book sale evolving. You know, the rest of the library too, but the book sale evolving from that little space to what we have now in our basement.
Right.
So, but there were so many times when we would have poetry readings, or we did Readers Theater, or we did our annual meetings with the skits,
Right.
and making sure that Michael, we had him dressed up in women's clothes,
He was
and
with a mop on his head.
yeah, and the two of you helped us out with a couple of different Readers Theaters,
And he also
so,
always read at Christmas time
always,
upstairs
yep,
for the children.
yeah,
And
read at
just
Christmas.
loved, and other times too. But
Yeah.
I remember that
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah.
I used to tease him that he lived at the library and he came home to eat and sleep. It was almost true.
Well, he was here quite a bit. But
you got to know him very well.
I did, and we would just trash talk whatever baseball, football, basketball, whatever team let us down the night before. And it was funny because we had two different perspectives. I would watch it on TV, and he would listen to it on the radio. So it was kind of fun in the morning to come together and talk about this.
And this was great because I had no interest in sports, whatever, and he needed an outlet. So thank you.
So, yeah. So, but you've been able to, to have that very big house to keep, to have it be, keeping it going, and it's such a beautiful space right in the middle of town. And
well, it is lovely.
So,
it's rather big. However, the Grandamans lived there for 45 years. I've lived there for 50 plus. And all the stuff that people collect. Then my mother's stuff, Michael's mother's stuff, and my grandmother's stuff.
Yeah.
I'm working on it.
Yeah. I know. And when you're not working at it, like you're involved with the South Congregational Church.
Right.
In the choir.
In the choir. And I've been on various committees over the years.
Yeah.
And
you were also on the Shade Tree Committee.
Yes. And Michael was too, and he was tree warden at one point.
Yeah.
And he and I also were on the first board of the River Tree Arts. In fact, he wrote the first bylaws for River Tree Arts.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's amazing to. I mean, when you're here, I know that you've been here a while, but you've done a lot outside of your space.
Right.
So
and
you've given a lot of your time. So
worked on. He was the editor for the summer newspaper, the Village Gazette, and I did the photographs and the news, meaning what's coming up.
Yep.
I also did a lot of photographs for the York County Coast Star special editions back when. Yeah. And so we've done a lot of different things.
Yeah. Do you still get your camera out at all?
Oh, mostly flowers.
Mostly flowers, I know.
Especially this time of year.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So being here, you've seen a lot of changes in town.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, lots of people have different opinions of things. And I mean, I think the town tries to keep somewhat of the, of the history intact. But things change.
As an example of things changing, Green Street, when we first moved here, was two ways with parking on both sides.
Oh, wow.
So you can get a sense that there was not a lot of traffic.
There was not a lot of traffic because now it's a one-way.
One-way.
With one side.
Parking on one side. And that side's always full in the summertime. So
that is amazing. Yeah, you think about the amount of cars, or now we have between buses and people will come in their campers and
and things happen to houses. And
that's true.
So,
yeah.
I mean, when we first moved here, there were 3 houses in the neighborhood that were over 200 years old, and they'd never been sold.
Oh, wow.
Now they've all been redone. And
you had last summer, you had a lovely wedding in your backyard.
Yes.
And there was an interesting guest that came to that wedding, which sat up in a tree, and we all looked up at it, and we thought that was the funniest. We're talking about the wedding of Joshua Bodwell and Tamsin Bodwell.
And after the bride and groom, the porcupine was definitely the main attraction.
So
It was huge.
Yeah, so there sat this porcupine up in the tree watching the whole thing, sleeping, but watching the whole
and
thing.
eating the tree.
And eating the tree.
Fortunately, it left before it killed the tree.
And I just somehow thought that was maybe Michael being there at that wedding.
Oh, you think?
In spirit.
Yeah.
And in porcupine
Because
spirit.
he would love to have been there. He and Josh were
Yeah.
the best of friends.
Yeah.
Even though they were a whole generation apart.
Yeah, but there's something about when you meet somebody that is such a kindred spirit.
Yeah.
And yeah, they had quite a relationship. And you did too.
So, yeah.
You do too
Right.
with Josh. So
Yeah,
that's pretty
absolutely.
special. And watching Ilona grow up.
Right. Well, I remember
So-
when the two of them would come over, she was just a little girl at that point.
Yeah.
And the minute Josh came in the door, Michael and he were just at it, literature. And Ilona would look at me and say, "Oh, boys." And we go off and play darts or something in the other room.
That's so funny.
Oh,
Well, thank you for being on our show. And
Oh.
thank you for being this is my last one, Suzanne, and I
Mary
couldn't
Lou.
imagine it. Anybody else sitting here in this chair. So
Oh.
it's been so much fun.
well,
And I hope our friendship continues.
oh, it will. It
Good.
will.
Now that
you'll
I'll
a
have
little more
time. So I'm going to come knocking on your door.
Good.
But
Good.
thank you for everything that you've done for this library, both of you.
Well,
And for continuing to do wonderful things.
Well,
So
I'm
I can't
glad
wait
to
for
be
that
here.
book to be in print and
all right.
available in stores
It-
locally.
we'll get it out there.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Oh, thank you, Mary Lou.
So, and thanks to our executive producer, Mike Kelly, and thank you all for being with us tonight. And we'll see you back here next time for another episode of What's Your Story?